The problem with architects. Now, before you start popping off in the comments, hashtag not all, but these are some common problems that people have found historically with architects, and still there's quite a lot of them acting this way currently. So the first thing I would say is their initial quoting system, how they price you up for your drawings. Not many architects now offer a fixed price from the start. The most common way to price for their projects is to price you up for the project based off of a percentage of the build cost. We can all envisage what problems this may cause. For instance, if you were to get a builder out and ask them to quote for how much does this extension cost or how much is it going to cost for this loft conversion, they're almost always going to ask you for drawings first before they can give you a price. We're in a chicken and egg situation here, which just doesn't work for modern consumers. A lot of the time, an initial architect's quote is not going to include submitting your planning application, producing building regulations drawings, submitting a building control application for you, writing statements for your planning application, design changes. All of these things may arrive later as surprise bills. And again, this is just not how people expect things to be nowadays. This is precisely why we created the Arkiplan service. We actually built it from the ground up based off what consumers need and want nowadays, not what benefits us in the short term or what is the norm. Next, the initial house survey. Now, the old school way of doing things is someone would come round with a pen and paper and a laser measure and a tape measure, and they would take some rough sketches, take some measurements, go away and then produce scale drawings of your existing house. And then they would add on the extension or make the changes. Now, the problem with this is if any measurements are missed during that initial survey, which tons would be, things are just going to get guesstimated after the fact to avoid another site visit. This is exactly why we send a technician round with a 3D camera, they scan the whole space, and then we can virtually revisit the space whenever we need to. We get accurate measurements and visuals of every space, internally and externally. Time. The sort of architects that people will use for domestic projects are small companies. This means they're not going to have processes in place or targets for turnaround of projects. So if any of you have used architects for small domestic projects in the past, you will know better than anybody that things can just drag on and on and on forever. The difference with us is that we manage so many homeowner projects at once. We have to build in processes and targets for every team that's working on a project. So everybody is targeted on turnaround times. It means that we're a well-oiled machine at handling these projects, and there's no lull at any point in the process. Transparency. Just like solicitors and other ancient professions, old school architects used to get by on the mystique of people not really knowing what are they doing, when are they doing it, are they even working on it right now? You just had to wait, really. This doesn't work for modern consumers. Modern consumers want to know, can I have it now? If not, when can I have it? Because I've got shit to do. Like, I need to know. This is why Uber is so successful. It isn't because the taxi arrives quicker. It isn't because they're cheaper. It's because you have certainty on when they're going to arrive. That's the most attractive feature about Uber, is the transparency of knowing when the car is coming. And we built the Arkiplan service with exactly that in mind. We have an app, we have automated communications being sent out to clients, we have notifications pinging them. Drawings are going to be ready on this date, you can check them here. Here's when we're submitting your planning application. And this is why our clients love to work with us instead of an old school style architect. Build budget not being considered. Now, it's really common for an architect to sort of flex their design muscle, produce a design for you that, sure, it's beautiful, but for most homeowners with regular homeowner budgets, it just isn't practical to build. It's so common for somebody to get planning permission and building control approval for their renovation project, and then they start getting builders quotes, and then they realise, shit, we haven't got the money for this. Like, we just can't afford it. Then we have to pay for design changes with the architect, go back to planning to scale the design back, and it's just more time, more money, more frustration. This is why at Arkiplan, we actually do a detailed quantity surveyor's build cost report at the design stage. So this is a fully detailed report telling you, it's not just a ballpark figure, it's how much does it cost to build this in your postcode area. It even includes skip hire, paint, it has everything you could possibly want on it. It has everything on it, so you know how much is it going to cost to build, and then you have a benchmark to compare builders' quotes to when they start arriving. You can then be confident that when we're applying for planning permission for something, if it does get approved, you can get excited because you can afford to build it. Old school architects at the design stage might be using a calculation that's like £1,500 to £3,000 per square metre. And that's such a broad figure to use that it's almost useless. Multiple companies required. Now, most home renovation projects, especially if you're extending or converting your loft, you're going to need structural engineers calculations. The most common outcome if you were to go to an architect is they're either going to refer you to or they're going to ask you to find your own structural engineer. Now, the problem with this is, first of all, you have to go through the rigmarole of trying to find them. Most homeowners, they don't know what makes a good engineer. They don't know how much they should be charging. The other problem is that structural engineer isn't going to be able to quote you for the structural scheme until they've seen the drawings. So when you instructed that architect at the start, it doesn't include the structural engineer's quote, and in fact, you won't know what the structural engineer's quote is going to be until you're much further down the line. This is why at Arkiplan we've created the premium package. It's a fixed price from the start that includes all the drawings, all the applications, and the structural engineer's calculations. And it's fixed, and the price is fixed regardless of how many beams or posts or special foundations you need. So you can start the project knowing how much you're going to spend on this design and application phase. Now, just to reiterate, this is not how all architects work. There are a lot of modern, forward-thinking architects out there that are taking on board some of these processes and are doing things differently. But this is why companies like us are thriving in this industry. If you want us to look at your project, just head over to arkiplan.co.uk, get a quote, and we'll speak to you soon. I hope that's been useful, and I'll see you on the next one. Thanks.